The Dear Lords Book of Greek Myth, Part 6. Dionysus, the minor gods, Centaurs, Nymphs, and Satyrs, Prometheus, and Pandora. Dionysus, the god of wine, was the youngest of the Olympians. He was the only one of the 12 great gods whose mother was immortal. His father was Zeus himself. Jealous Hera hated his mother, the beautiful princess Semele, and one day when Zeus was away, the goddess disguised herself as an old crone and went to visit her. She talked about this and that, pretending to be very friendly, and then she asked why Semele's husband was not at home and what kind of man he was. "He is nobody less than the mighty Zeus," Selene said proudly. "How can you be so sure about that?" said the old woman. "I know many husbands who claim to be the Lord of all creation. Do you have proof that he really is who he says he is? If I were you, I'd ask him to show himself in all his splendor." Then she went away, and Semele was left alone wondering. When Zeus returned, Semele asked him to grant her a wish. Zeus, who loved her dearly, swore by the river Styx to fulfill any wish she had. "Then show yourself in all your glory," said Semele. Zeus begged her to change her wish, for he knew that no mortal eyes could bear the sight of him when he revealed himself as the flashing thunder god, 100 times brighter than the sun. But Hera had planted the seed of suspicion so deep in Semele's heart that she refused to change her wish. Zeus had to keep his promise, for he had sworn by the river Styx, the most solemn oath of the gods. He joined together the smallest storm cloud he could find, chose his tiniest lightning bolt, and showed himself to Semele as the mighty thunder god. Even so, he was so brilliant that Semele caught fire and burned to cinders. Zeus could do nothing to save her. She went down to Hades as a fluttering ghost. Zeus barely managed to rescue her unborn son and sewed him under the skin of his own leg. And when the child was ready to be born, he sprang forth as the immortal god Dionysus. Zeus knew well enough who was the cause of Semele's death, and he gave her little son to Hermes and told him to hide the boy from Hera. Hermes carried Dionysus to the faraway valley of Nysa and left him in the care of a band of Maenads, the nymphs of the valley. There, Dionysus grew up with tigers and leopards for playmates. Large bunches of purple grapes grew on the sunny slope of the valley of Nysa, and in time Dionysus invented the making of wine from their juice. As a young and beautiful god dressed in flowing robes of royal purple, he went out into the world to teach men how to make wine. The Maenads went with him, and so did the leopards and tigers, and ever more followers joined him. Wherever he went, he was worshipped as a new god, and his father Zeus watched him with pleasure. Dionysus returned to Greece and traveled from island to island, teaching the making of wine. One day he was sleeping alone on a beach. A pirate ship sailed by. When the pirates saw the richly clad youth, they thought he was a prince and carried him off on their ship to hold him for ransom. He did not wake from his heavy slumber till the ship was far out to sea. With gentle words he tried to persuade the pirates to take him back. He was not a prince, he said. He was a god of wine, and his riches were not of the world. The pirates laughed scornfully and sailed on, paying him no heed. Suddenly their laughter died, for out of the sea sprouted vines loaded with grapes. They grew, twining around the oars, winding up the mast, and spreading over the whole ship as though it were an arbor. Blood-red wine dripped down the sail, and the air was filled with the sound of roaring tigers and braying asses. Dionysus himself seemed to grow till he filled the ship with his glory. Horrified, the sailors threw themselves into the sea, but they did not drown, for Dionysus was a kind god. He changed them into dolphins, and that is why dolphins are the most human of all creatures that live in the sea. Dionysus had brought much joy to mankind, and Zeus decided that it was time for him to give him a golden throne on Olympus. Hera rose in anger and said she refused to share the hall with the son of a mortal woman, but Zeus pounded his indomitable fists, and Hera grew silent. There were only 12 thrones in the hall, so kind Hestia quietly rose from hers and said that Dionysus could have it. Her place was at the hearth, she said. She needed no throne. Before seeing himself in the throne, Dionysus asked to see his mother, for whom he had always longed. Zeus not only permitted him to see her, but let him go down to Hades and bring her to the glory of Olympus, for she was now the mother of one of the great gods. Happily, Dionysus entered the hall and seated himself on the golden throne. The air was filled with the music of flutes and tambourines. Never had there been such a din and merriment on Olympus. Zeus looked around with great content and beckoned to the cupbearer, Ganymede, bidding him fill the golden goblets with sweet nectar. Minor gods, nymphs, satyrs, and centaurs. Minor gods and goddesses also lived on Olympus, beside the 12 great ones. The most powerful of them were the goddesses of destiny, Clotho, Laches, and Atropos. They were the three fates, and they decided how long a mortal would live and how long the rule of the gods should last. When a mortal was born, Clotho spun the thread of life. Laches measured a certain length, and Atropos cut the thread at the end of life. They knew the past and the future, and even Zeus had no power to sway their decisions. Their sister, Nemesis, saw to it that all evil, all good on earth were justly repaid, and all mortals feared her. Man's creator and his best friend was the Titan Prometheus. Zeus had given Prometheus and his brother Epimetheus the task of repopulating the earth after all living creatures had been perished in the earthly battles of the gods. He gave the two brothers great measures of gifts to bestow upon their creatures, and they went down to earth and began to make men and beasts out of river clay. Wise Prometheus modeled men with great care in the shape of the gods. Epimetheus rapidly made all kinds of animals without any forethought. He lavished the good gifts upon them. When Prometheus had finished shaping man, he found that there were few of the good gifts left. Animals could run faster, see, smell, and hear better, and had much more endurance. Besides, they were kept snug in their warm coats of fur while man shivered in the cold nights. Prometheus was sorry for mankind. He went to Zeus and asked if he might have some of the sacred fire for his poor creations. But Zeus said fire belonged to the gods alone. Prometheus could not bear to see his people suffer, and he decided to steal fire, though he knew that Zeus would punish him severely. He went up to Olympus, took a glowing ember from the sacred hearth, and hid it in a hollow stalk of fennel. He carried it down to earth, gave it to mankind, and told them never to let the light from Olympus die out. No longer did man shiver in the cold of night, and the beasts feared the light of the fire and did not dare attack them. A strange thing happened. As man lifted their eyes from the ground and watched the smoke from the fire spiral upward, their thoughts rose up with it to the heavens. They began to wonder and think, and were no longer earth-bound clods. They built temples to honor the gods and wanted to share what they had with them. They burned the best pieces of meat on their altars. Zeus was furious when he first saw the fires flickering on earth. He was appeased when the savory scent of meat reached his nostrils. All the gods loved the smell of the burnt offerings. It spiced their daily food of ambrosia and nectar. But Prometheus knew how hard men worked to make their living, and thought it was a pity that they burned up the best parts of their food. He told them to butcher an ox, divide the meat in 2 equal heaps, in one with the chops and roast, hidden underneath the sues and bones, and the other with the scraps and entrails, covered with snow-white fat. Prometheus then invited Zeus to come down to earth and choose for himself which parts he wanted for his burnt offerings. Zeus, of course, chose the best-looking heap, but when he discovered that it had been tricked up, he grew very angry. Not only had Prometheus stolen the sacred fire and given it to men, he had taught them to cheat the gods. He resolved to punish both Prometheus and his creations. Cast in unbreakable irons, Prometheus was chained to the top of the Caucasus Mountains. Every day an eagle swooped out of the sky and ate his liver. At night his immortal liver grew anew, but every day the eagle returned and he had to suffer it again. Thus was Prometheus punished. But Zeus found a more subtle way to punish the mortals. He sent to earth a beautiful but silly woman. Her name was Pandora. Pandora was modeled by Hephaestus in the likeness of Aphrodite. He carved her out of a block of white marble, made her lips of red rubies and her eyes of sparkling sapphires. Athena breathed life into her and dressed her in elegant garments. Aphrodite decked her with jewels and fixed the red mouth in a winning smile. Into the mind of this beautiful creature Zeus put insatiable curiosity, and then he gave her a sealed jar and warned her never to open it. Hermes brought Pandora down to earth and offered her in marriage to Epithus, who lived among the mortals. Epimetheus had been warned by Prometheus never to accept a gift from Zeus, but he could not resist the beautiful woman. Thus Pandora came to live among the mortals, and men came from near and far to stand awestruck by her wondrous beauty. But Pandora was not perfectly happy, for she did not know what was in the jar that Zeus had given her. It was not long before her curiosity got the better of her, and she had to take a quick peek. The moment she opened the lid, out swarmed a horde of miseries: greed, vanity, slander, envy, and all the evils that until then had been unknown to mankind. Horrified at what she had done, Pandora clapped the lid on, just in time to keep Hope from flying away too. Zeus had put Hope at the bottom of the jar, and the unleashed miseries would quickly have put an end to it. They stung and bit the mortals as Zeus had planned, but their suffering made them wicked instead of good, as Zeus had hoped. They lied, they stole, they killed each other, and became so evil, Zeus in disguise decided to drown them in a flood. But there was one man on earth who had not turned evil. He was the son of Prometheus. His name was Decalion.